Hey guys, and welcome back to Monka, where stupid shit ensues, but today I had some food that I tried and I want to talk about it, and believe it or not, it's not cereal or Pop Tarts, but it's pretty damn close. But what did I had? Well, I had 3 different varieties of great value toaster pastries. These are kind of like the knockoff Pop Tarts that Walmart sells. I've seen them quite a bit at Walmart when I go to the Pop Tarts aisle. They're pretty much put right above the Pop Tarts. Never really grabbed them because I wasn't really interested until more recently. I saw them and I was like, you know what? I might as well try these. But one box of these costs $1.78 for 12 pastries or 6 sleeves, which is considerably cheaper than a box of Pop Tarts, considering something like Pop Tarts, like this 8 box of Pop Tarts, which is 4 sleeves, would cost $1.99, and this for 6 sleeves costs $1.78. So it's actually cheaper for more pastries than it is for the higher scale Pop Tarts. But today we'll be talking about 3 different flavors of the Great Value toaster pastries. You got brown sugar cinnamon, chocolate fudge, as well as cookies and cream. Now, before diving into it, even though prices are cheaper, it might matter to some, but it is worth mentioning that the calories are quite different between the 2 brands besides one variant. But these are all per 2 pastries, but for 2 pastries of Pop Tarts cookies and cream, it is 360 calories. Per 2 of the Great Value cookies and cream, it is 400, so it is 40 more with the frosted cookies and cream Great Value variety. For the chocolate fudge Pop Tarts, it is 370 per 2, while for chocolate fudge Great Value, it is 400 per 2, which is 30 calories more over Pop Tarts. The least amount of deviation is between the brown sugar cinnamons. Per 2 of Pop Tarts, it is 400 calories. Per 2 of the Great Value brown sugar cinnamon, it is 410. So it is just a 10 calorie difference between the brown sugar cinnamons. But while it might not matter to everyone, it is worth mentioning that the caloric differences are different, especially between like cookies and cream. It is way higher, but it's just something worth mentioning that it is, while it is cheaper, it is higher in calories pretty much across the board, besides brown sugar cinnamon, which isn't that great. Like I said, whether you care or not, that's up to you, but it's just worth mentioning in my opinion. Now, before going into my opinion about the Great Value variety, I wanted to kind of touch on the Pop Tarts, since I just want to mention the Pop Tart varieties, since I do have potential biases, so I want to get those kind of biases out there so you kind of understand, and just to be transparent about my opinion on the Pop Tart varieties. But in terms of brown sugar cinnamon Pop Tarts, these are pretty good. I won't lie, I like these quite a bit. I do not go for these all the time, and they're not really in my top 5, but I do enjoy a brown sugar cinnamon Pop Tart from time to time. Just know that they're not really all of my favorites. I'm not as crazy about them as other people, but I still think that brown sugar cinnamon Pop Tarts are pretty good. Chocolate fudge Pop Tarts I like a pretty decent amount as well. They're probably in the top 5, to be honest, the currently existing ones, but I don't go for these all the time, but I enjoy them a decent amount. My only complaint about them is I wish they were more chocolatey, but other than that, these are pretty good Pop Tarts as well. Like I said, not very heavy opinions about both of them. I like them both decent, but the one that I do have heavy opinions about is cookies and cream. Cookies and cream, out of all the current Pop Tarts that they are selling, is my second favorite. These Pop Tarts absolutely slap for me. These really are only beat by Hot Fudge Sundae, but honestly, these are my second favorite. I absolutely love these Pop Tarts. It has a really good and deep chocolate flavor within the pastry, and these are just banger, honestly. So I absolutely love cookies and cream Pop Tarts. Now, before going to my opinion on the different flavors, we'll of course go over a visual comparison before diving into the flavors themselves. But as you can see, kind of cool on this one, but on Pop Tarts, all of them are unlabeled, and they just have the same silver wrapping foil that just has no description of what's in it. On the Great Value ones, you actually have printed on it what it actually is. So it says brown sugar cinnamon, as you can see. Kind of cool because you actually know what's in the slip, instead of having like the Pop Tarts where you just don't know what's inside. Now, for the record, these are both going to be of the brown sugar cinnamon variety of Pop Tart and then the Great Value. Now, these are the 2 pastries in their full form. This one is the Great Value one. This one is the Pop Tart variety. As you can see, kind of more generous on the Great Value for the frosting. It's got just kind of all over the place. The Pop Tart has that pretty consistent Pop Tart frosting that is pretty uniform but kind of skimpish. You can see in terms of thickness side to side that the Great Value one right here is kind of thicker than the Pop Tart variety. Overall, in terms of appearances, though, they kind of look the same. On the back, they are a bit different. This one has a kind of a different texture, patterning, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, Great Value's definitely here visually, you can see it, but as well in the other ones, they are a bit more generous with the frosting. Now, in terms of the internals, as you can see here. You can kind of get an idea of how they do the filling. Visually, to me at least, it looks like they're about the same. It's worth mentioning that maybe it's a little bit thicker in the Great Value variety, but that might just be a visual. It is definitely thicker in the pastry, but I actually can't tell visually whether or not it's actually thicker in the filling. It kind of looks like it may be just a slight bit more of filling, but that might just be visual. On the camera, maybe you can tell, maybe you can't. It's just, it seems slight, but that just might be what it looks like. What you can't really see is really the brown sugar cinnamon filling in the Pop Tart is more grainy, while in the Great Value variety, it's a bit more liquidy. I don't know if you'll be able to see it when you pull it apart. Not really, but it is a bit more liquid in the Great Value than it is in the Pop Tart variety. But going over all three varieties, my least favorite out of the Great Value is the cookies and cream. This one had a lot to live up to, honestly, with my expectations with the Pop Tarts, and honestly, it just didn't get there. It isn't bad by any means, honestly. Like, honest to God, it isn't bad. It is probably the driest out of the three, just because the filling is kind of pasty, and it's by far the pastiest filling out of all three of them. Mainly, my problems with it is the crust, or the pastry part, is very doughy tasting, and that's in all three varieties. But in this one in particular, it really weakens that like deep chocolate flavor, and it makes the chocolate flavor a lot less enjoyable compared to something like Pop Tarts, cookies and cream. It is still present, but that doughy flavor just really ends up overwhelming the chocolate. It just makes it less enjoyable. In terms of the filling though, it's pretty good, but like I said, it's the pastiest out of the three, so by far it's like the least enjoyable. Also, it doesn't really have that sweetness overload like the Pop Tarts do for the cookies and cream that makes it really enjoyable. In terms of texture though, it's pretty enjoyable, but that's across all three. All three of them have that doughy tasting pastry, but as well, all three of them have a really soft pastry and like the soft filling and everything that makes it more enjoyable kind of over a Pop Tart, just because it's softer. It's more cookie-like than it is like that kind of dry texture that all Pop Tarts, but by far my least favorite is cookies and cream. I imagine people would still be able to enjoy it, so I'd recommend checking it out if maybe you're interested in cookies and cream. It just really isn't as deep in chocolate flavor or as sweet as the Pop Tarts variety. Now, my second favorite was the brown sugar cinnamon. Kind of surprising because I really don't go for brown sugar cinnamon Pop Tarts all that often, but I still enjoyed this one quite a bit. Now, it's worth mentioning that in the pastry itself, there isn't a lot of that flavor of like that brown sugar cinnamon, which Pop Tarts do have flavoring in the crust. This one just kind of a doughy crust, so it doesn't really have all that much flavor. However, there's a lot of flavor in the filling and frosting that makes it really good. It has a really heavy like brown sugar and cinnamon flavor that's actually, I would say, stronger than Pop Tarts and more well defined because it's not as sweet as a Pop Tart. So really that less sweetness kind of lends itself to having more flavor, which is really enjoyable. And like I mentioned previously, for the brown sugar cinnamon one, for whatever reason, the filling is more liquidy in the brown sugar cinnamon Great Value toaster pastries than it is in Pop Tarts, but it's still pretty enjoyable. It makes it really soft, and it honestly makes it more like it came out of the toaster, even if you eat it straight from the foil. But these are pretty good, to be honest. These for me could easily replace the Pop Tart version. And my favorite out of the three, and kind of surprising because I really don't go for these in the Pop Tart variety, but my favorite of the Great Value toaster pastries is the chocolate fudge. This is actually surprisingly good, and honestly, I would take this over a Pop Tart any day because these have a really well-defined chocolate flavor, and due to them all across the board not being as sweet as Pop Tarts, the chocolate in this is more defined. It also doesn't taste as artificial as a Pop Tart somehow in the chocolate flavor, which is kind of weird considering these are cheaper, but the crust is chocolate, the frosting is chocolate, the filling is chocolate, and all across the board, you really just get a good deep chocolate flavor that's really surprising for what is otherwise a knockoff Pop Tart. But I would definitely take these over Pop Tart just because the chocolate flavor is really well defined. Honestly, these slap pretty hard, but overall, my opinion on the Great Value toaster pastries is that they're pretty good, to be honest, and they're a good alternative. Honestly, if you just want something cheaper, they're enjoyable enough to where they could very well replace a Pop Tart for you, probably. I am very well satisfied with the chocolate fudge and the brown sugar cinnamon. The cookies and cream, I'll leave it because I'd rather have a Pop Tart version over that one, but these two, at least chocolate fudge and brown sugar cinnamon, could easily replace Pop Tart varieties. They are pretty good, and considering they're cheaper, it's actually kind of surprising. As well, the texture is just more enjoyable than the Pop Tart varieties. They're more soft and not as dry as a Pop Tart, so these are more enjoyable over a Pop Tart, at least for those two varieties. Now, there's also a cherry and a strawberry version. I didn't try those because I didn't really want to, but those are on the shelf as well. Really, the only thing Great Value is lacking in is variety, but obviously they just want to sell kind of the popular versions to try and compete with the popular versions of Pop Tarts. If you are on a budget and you've seen the Great Value ones, honestly, they're pretty good, and I'd recommend trying them just because they do taste good, and for at least a chocolate chocolate fudge and the brown sugar cinnamon, I'd say they compete head to head with Pop Tarts, and I'd absolutely recommend trying them if you see them on the shelf. But thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you. Stay chill.